Welcome to the video lecture series, Culture, Worldview, and Origins. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. This is on the history of two cultures. This is series number 4, lecture series number 4 out of 8. And what we're looking at is the two cultures, meaning the Western culture and the non-Western culture, and their interaction and their interface through history. What we've just ended with is the non-Western culture, which was deported for not obeying their God. They did not observe the Sabbath. They did not remain culturally pure. They did not. And so because of that, they were invaded. They were conquered and deported back to Babylon. Now we're going to be looking at the history and how it starts developing around these two cultures, the Western, non-Western. What we have is the 6th century BC was an important turning point in the cultural formation of ideas and beliefs. In 600 BC, before that, from 1300 BC to 600, Israel controlled a lot of the Near East area, the trade routes, and so their belief system was exported to many points of the world, and they controlled a lot of the economy in that area. And so it was their belief system that was dominant. But now that they did not remain culturally pure, now we have a shift in dominance in that, number one, in 600 BC, the Hebrew culture, belief in one God, is conquered and deported around 597 BC. But there's another event that is happening at the same time, in the same time period, and that is in the Greek culture. On the Western side is the birth of philosophical naturalism. Philosophical naturalism is born around 600 BC. So what we have is kind of the death of supernatural, the death of God's culture, or the culture that was monotheistic, that believed in the supernatural, is conquered and deported. And at the same time as being born across the sea is the Greek culture. In the Greek culture is the philosophical naturalism. Now, what do we mean by philosophical naturalism? Well, this is what, in the Story of Philosophy by Brian McGee, he states the first philosophers were making two great breaks with the past simultaneously. In the first place, they were trying to understand the world by the use of their reason, without appealing to religion, or revelation, or authority, or tradition. Now, what did the Hebrew people appeal to? What was their source of reliable knowledge? Their source of reliable knowledge was religion, belief in God, was in revelation, which their God had revealed to them, and this God was their authority, and that was maintained as tradition. So in other words, the Greek philosophers are flipping the tables totally of what the non-Western Hebrew nation believed. They are saying we are no longer, and the Greek culture was permeated by the belief system of the supernatural. That's where we get Greek mythology from. And so all of their gods that had saturated the culture, this group of academics say no more. No more gods, no more religion, no more revelation, no more authority, no more tradition. What we're doing is making a break from the past, because that's what the cultures did. The conservative cultures maintained that conservative history, that tradition, the authority, the revelation, the religion. And so they're saying no more. We are not going to believe in that stuff anymore. And where are we going to go for reliable knowledge? We're going to go to human reason. So that is the birth of naturalism, of philosophical naturalism. They are sealing off the compartment and saying everything inside this compartment is natural and only happens through natural causes. It has natural effects, therefore has natural effects. Cause and effect is natural. There is no divine. There are no miracles. Everything must and will be explained through natural causes. That is the birth of what is called philosophical naturalism. So at the same time that the Hebrews were being deported, the Greeks were developing a new way of thinking. In this new way of thinking, there was different philosophers that had their own bent, that had their own way of seeing this new philosophy. And so they were taking this philosophy and developing, okay, what would I think about origins using this new philosophy? Because before it was said that God created. Well, now that God is separated off, how did it happen? How did it get here? And so different philosophers, there was Thales and Miletus. He believed that water was the primary source. And then there was Anaximenes and Anaximander, and they had different reasons. They had earth, they had, different, was the primary source of life or the mover. But this fellow, Heraclitus, he was from Ephesus around 500 BC. So that's just now 100 years later after the development and the deportation of the Hebrew nation. Heraclitus of Ephesus, he was one of the early pre-Socratic philosophers who, like the others, sought to identify the first cause for the creation of the world. So his first cause, what was it? And when they look for a first cause, they're excluding revelation. They're excluding an external authority. They're excluding tradition. They're looking to build on what is the first cause. So this is what he says. Though the Logos is as I have said, men always fail to comprehend it, both before they hear it and when they hear it for the first time. For though all things come into being in accordance with this Logos, they seem like men without experiences. Though in fact they do have experience, both of words and deeds, such as I have set forth, distinguishing each thing in accordance with its nature and declaring what it is. But other men are as unaware of what they do when awake as they are when they are asleep. So what is Heraclitus proposing? One, he's proposing a concept that men won't understand. So he's kind of setting himself up as he has knowledge that most men don't understand, don't know. He has wisdom about the world and how it was created and where it came from. What does he say? He said it was a logos. He said the logos is what is the source. Logos is what created all that exists and that maintains it. So what is this logos? This logos is rational, is natural within the system, is universal. It's a thought through which the universe came into being and by which it is maintained. The Logos for Heraclitus was not water. It was not dirt. It wasn't the primary building material. The Logos was a mystical power. It was a fire that ran out through the universe, imparting information, organizing, and giving life to matter. So that was the Logos of Heraclitus. And that is very different. That is very different from Thales, which was something material, water. It was different than Anaximenes, that was the kind of the dirt, the mud. It's different from the others in that it is immaterial. It is an unseen force, but it is a fire. It is a fire that is eternal and that burns for eternity, giving life and maintaining. And so this was Heraclitus. Heraclitus from around 500 BC, from the city of Ephesus. So we have a new source. What is the source of reliable knowledge now? Well, for this Western culture, it is human reason. And based on this human reason then, what does human reason tell us about the origin of the universe? Well, using human reason and using the parameters that there is no gods and no revelation and everything is natural, then we have an explanation by the philosophers, the Greek naturalists, of how did everything come about. So it came about by natural causes within a natural system. And what was one of these causes, or the primary cause? For Heraclitus, it was a mystical power that was fire, that was like fire, that organized and breathed life into what had been organized. So that is now a whole different concept than what we had earlier from the Hebrews, of what they had as their source of reliable knowledge was God and God's revelation. What we have now is excluding God, excluding revelation, excluding authority, excluding tradition. Now we have man breaking off, beginning anew with a humanistic, just thinking, man-centered reason. How did it all happen? How did we get here? And so now this is the new start. This is the difference between now the Western culture and the non-Western culture. They each have chosen their source of reliable knowledge. And how does that explain the issue of origins? Thanks for listening. This is number 4, lecture series number 4 out of 8 on the history of the two cultures in the video lecture series of Culture, Worldview, and Origins. We're Tim and Holly Nyquist. There's the addresses if you'd like to communicate with us. We'd be glad to continue to dialogue with you. Thanks again for tuning in.